What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Podcast 129. I am Hunter Waldrop, and that is Jake Stinchcomb back from the dead this week. We are live from the Peach State, episode number 13, and man, what a weekend it was. And man, I know Jake's got a lot to get into. He had boots on the ground for one of the best games probably in our entire lifetimes, and we'll see. So, Jake, how are we doing besides the actual result of that game that we will get into? How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. T-Town was a blast. I know the Dogs didn't get the win ultimately, but the roller coaster of emotions that game brought was probably the best of any sports event I've ever been to. I was at the national championship in 22 when we beat, I guess you could say 22. It happened in 22, but the 21 season when we beat Alabama and Indiana, the Ohio State Peach Bowl win, Kentucky a few weeks ago. That was this topped it all. The roller coaster of emotions we went through was crazy. Tuscaloosa is a great town, beautiful campus. It really is. That campus is so pretty. It's all flat. It's on a hill like Georgia is. Had a good time. Crazy weekend for sure. Like you said, we got a lot to get into. MLB Postseason started tonight. That's awesome. NFL's getting into the swing of things. So just we're in a great moment. Great season of sports, I guess. The NBA is about to start their preseason. If you're an NHL person, I think the first preseason game of the NHL season was tonight. We're in a great season of sports right now. I love it. I love it so much.
I'm glad you brought that up. So for those watching on YouTube, as you can tell, I'm not in my normal setup. I'm not in my room. Do want to offer all my thoughts and prayers to those affected by this recent hurricane. As I will say, I've got it rough in Statesboro right now. Like, I'm not in Statesboro right now. I'm back at home with my parents and my grandparents, hanging out with them because I still don't have power or water or anything like that. But I know the people in North Carolina, specifically Asheville and Boone, got hit pretty hard. So I do want to bring that out. But we were sitting there at the supper table this evening, and I was like, guys, it's going to be hard to get a hold of me because I was like, we're in the middle of college football. We're in the middle of the NFL. Postseason baseball started, and the regular season of hockey starts next week. And I low-key, even though we're from Georgia, like, I get into some hockey now. So this is like the best time of the year. I agree with you on that.
Go Preds, baby.
Let's go what?
Go Preds.
Oh, goodness. Don't even get me started with that. All right. Episode number 13. Jake, give me some advertising.
Feels good to be back. I love when this screen shows up. As always, go follow us on our socials. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. Trying to keep that as updated as we can with mine and Hunter's busy school schedules, work schedules. So we love the interaction you guys are giving with us. We appreciate it. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your friend, tell everybody about us. Go follow us. And if you, excuse me, go like, comment, subscribe on YouTube as always. And if you're not listening on YouTube, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So
I love it. I love it. So 1st and 10, but we got to bring on producer Tyler. Let's go. He's back.
What's up?
He's back again. He did a great job for us last week. But Jake, let's talk some 1st and 10, brother.
Yeah. Before we move into the 1st and 10, while these two beautiful faces are on the screen in front of me, I would like to shout out producer Tyler and Hunter for amazing podcast last week. That was awesome. I don't even know why I'm still up here. Tyler, you killed it last week. That was awesome. Y'all had a great show. I loved it. So I had to give you guys your flowers there. Y'all deserve it.
Appreciate it.
But moving into the 1st and 10. So this week we're coming up on the halfway point, moving into week 6. So we're going to go ahead. I know some of our preseason conference winners are kind of chalk right now, kind of done. Specifically, some of my preseason conference predictions, but we're going to predict through week 5 who we think each of our conference winners are, as well as give a G5 team. See who that G5 bid's going to be moving into the playoffs. So I guess with how my screen looks, the top left, we'll start with Hunter. Hunter, tell me who your SEC championship SEC champion is for week 5. I'm sorry, guys. I'm struggling with words tonight. 2 tests. The Braves suck. It's been a hard week, so just bear with me. Hunter, who is your SEC champion through 5 weeks of the college football season?
No, that's good. So I'm actually going to throw in a little extra tidbit to your 1st and 10. I'm going to give you a championship game for these and then give you a winner. How about that? I feel like that makes it a little bit more interesting.
Love it.
So SEC, gosh, this is so chalky. But as of right now, like if I had to pick on October 1st, I would pick Alabama to play Texas, and I would have Alabama winning the SEC.
I like it. I have Bama as well. I think they're the clear-cut number 1 football team in the country right now. It's not even close. That could be an overreaction. It's only been 5 weeks, but after last week, they're the clear-cut number 1 in my opinion. If I had to say a game who they're going to play against, I don't know. Me and a buddy were talking about this earlier. What happens if Tennessee beats Bama and we beat Tennessee? All 3 of us are 11-1 who gets in. So either Georgia or Tennessee, who I think they'll be playing. I don't think it'll be Ole Miss or Texas, but or hell, I mean, if Texas loses 1 to Georgia, if 4 teams are 11-1, I don't know how that tiebreaker works. But answer your question, Bama, my SEC champion. Tyler, tell me who your SEC champion is through 5 weeks of the college football season.
Yeah, so I agree with you too. I think Alabama's the clear-cut favorite right now. I think they're the best team in the country. As far as who they're going to play, I kind of agree with you, Jake. I think Georgia might squeak back in there. That 4-way tie would be really interesting. So I kind of hope that happens. But I think they would probably at this point play either Georgia or Texas. So I'm going to say.
Nice. Let's go back to you, Tyler. Who do you have as your Big Ten champion?
For my Big Ten champion, I'm actually switching up what I said on my bracket. I've got Ohio State. They look really good. Jeremiah Smith looks really freaking good. They're scary. I've got them winning that one.
Yeah, I have the same one. You're right. Jeremiah Smith looks freakish on the field right now. He looks like a really good ball player for the future. I have Ohio State winning it too. I do think they're going to drop one. They're going into a gauntlet right now. Basically, you got Iowa this weekend, or at Oregon the next week, and then Nebraska and Penn State. Ultimately, I think they drop one of those 4, and they end up winning the Big Ten championship. If I had to say an opponent, probably Oregon because of the way their schedule works out. So could be Penn State though. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they go 11-1 and win the Big Ten championship. So, Hunter, who's your Big Ten champion?
I'll take Ohio State as well. As far as like an actual opponent, I feel like it's kind of wide open when you're diving into it, and you just see, Oregon. They're finally starting to pick up that steam that we were all kind of hoping for. They've looked pretty solid the past 2 weeks. You also got Michigan's only got – no, they don't even have a conference loss yet. But I'm not sold on them as far as running their schedule. But they're in there. And then you got USC. They only have 1 conference loss. They have a big game against Penn State in 2 weeks. I think if they can get past that one, they got a chance of playing in Indianapolis. And then Penn State, like you said, if they get past USC, even if they lose that 1 game to Ohio State, they've got a good chance. And then another team I want to throw out there, nobody's really talking about them, except for Liam Blutman, of course. The Indiana Hoosiers are 5-0, and their schedule is softer than baby shit, okay? I think they play Michigan. They might play Ohio State, but, the way that I've seen them play, they could get Michigan. I think they get Michigan and Indiana too. All you got to do is stop the run. And they've looked really good on the offensive side of the ball. So not saying that they're going to make it, but just a team to watch out for. You're going to look at your phone and be like, oh my gosh, Indiana's 8-1 or Indiana's 7-2 after 9 weeks of ball. Just throwing it out there. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, I do have Ohio State beating Oregon.
I like it. Hunter, tell me your Big 12 champion.
Oh, gosh. Let's line up 8 teams and just do a horse race, and I think they'll have a better chance of predicting the Big 12 than the teams themselves. I guess as of right now, I got to take Kansas State. I guess they check more boxes than all the other teams. And they had a bad game against BYU at BYU in a spot that was not good for them. But Avery Johnson proved this week that he could do a little bit more with his arm. But I also think that they know that he doesn't have to. He can use those legs. Their running game with DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards is really good. Their defense is pretty solid. So, and they outgained BYU by 185 yards in that game. The turnovers are what killed them. So as of right now, I'll take Kansas State. And as far as who they're going to play, I don't know. Take teams 2 through 8 and flip a coin every time and then choose one. I guess Colorado.
Yeah. I'm glad you made the point about Kansas State dropping the game to BYU because I picked Kansas State too. I mean, I'm picking them as well. You look at their schedule after week 1, they had at Tulane, got a win. Got Arizona at home, dominant win. And then you had BYU and Oklahoma State. So that was kind of a look-ahead spot, I guess you could call it, between Arizona and Oklahoma State with the BYU game. They dropped the game, but that's a tough 4 games to play after week 1 when you haven't played a team with a pulse yet. And so after this week, they got at Colorado. If you win this game, Colorado's going to be up for that. They're going to be 5-1 with West Virginia, Kansas, Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati, finish the season at Iowa State. If you get past this weekend, West Virginia is not the team we thought they were going to be. Kansas sure as hell ain't the team we thought they were going to be. And obviously, bottom of the Big 12, Houston, Arizona State, and Cincinnati. So I think they have a really good chance to at least make it. But that's if Cam Rising is healthy. Let me put this out there. I have Kansas State, but if Cam Rising is healthy, that's my Big 12 winner. But I just can't trust that he's healthy.
I do want to add in one thing before Tyler goes. I agree with you, Jake. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, Cam Rising. If he's healthy, Utah's completely different. They have a pulse and they're good. When they bring in Wilson Jr., they're not as good, and they are the same team that they were last year.
Yep.
One team I didn't bring up, and I can't believe I always do this, but they're just so hidden in the middle. Iowa State, they're 5-0. They're 5-0, and they look really good. Rocco Beck looks good. Matt Campbell has been a great coach for them. So I guess right now, if I had to choose, give me Farmageddon, which is the name of the rivalry, Kansas State versus Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. Tyler?
Yeah, I was actually hoping that you weren't going to mention Iowa State because that's who I was going to pick. They look really solid, and in a conference where you don't know what the hell is going to happen anytime soon, you don't really know the way it's going to shape out. And so I think that they've looked the most consistent out of any team in this conference, but I agree with you. If Cam Rising gets healthy, Utah is going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I'm going to go with a Utah-Iowa State championship game. I've got the Cyclones.
I like that. Like it.
ACC, Tyler.
This is such a toss-up. Obviously, the clear-cut favorite to start the year. They suck. I'm not completely sold on Clemson, although I'm going to pick them to win it just because I guess right now they look the best, but I still think anything can happen in this conference. So not confident in it, but I'm going with Clemson.
Yeah, I'm also going with Clemson. I know I was one of the few that were – or not one of the few, but I was one of the ones on this podcast very high on Miami coming to the year, and I still am. I think Miami's going to go 12-0. They don't have to play Clemson on the schedule. I think their best opponent until the end of the season is Louisville. But you look at Clemson's schedule, I mean, they kind of have a cakewalk. You got Florida State this week. That might be a tough one. Wake Forest, Virginia, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, the Citadel, and South Carolina at home. So that Louisville game, they get them at home. I think they ultimately win out, and they're 11-1. They play 12-0 Miami and get Miami in the ACC championship. This is still Dabo's conference, and you got 2 ACC teams in the college football playoff this season. So that's who I have in the ACC.
Yeah, let me back up real quick. I forgot Miami existed. So when you said Miami, I was like, oh, damn, that's wild. Yeah, Miami's really good at football, but I think Clemson gets the edge still.
No, you're good, Tyler. That is not where I was expecting you to go with it. But I will say I like Clemson probably to win it. However, it's hard to choose against Miami. Everybody's like riding Miami. I will say this. I think I said in the ACC pod, like, Cristobal's got to prove it to me. Like, yeah, I know he had Mariota and that team at Oregon in 2014 was sick, but I don't think this team is as good as that 2014 Oregon team that should have won the national title. Cristobal since then has not proven to me that he can show up when it matters most. But granted, that was during the 14 playoff. You can drop two. So I don't know how that'll shape up as far as conference goes. I feel like this is the closest to the Big 12 as far as like there's going to be like a few upsets in there. You're like maybe you have a 2-loss team playing a Clemson or a Miami. So we'll see. SMU, they're solid, like Virginia Tech that we saw this past week. They have the opportunity to be a thorn in everybody's side. Syracuse, I know that who'd they drop one to recently? I can't remember who they dropped one to, but was
Stanford.
They lost to Stanford. Gosh, I'm sorry, Ashton. But anyways, Syracuse can still be a thorn in the side of teams. Like, I don't know how good Cal is. Like, they beat Auburn, but how good is that win now? Like, they get to play Miami on primetime this upcoming Saturday with game day coming there. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I guess if I had to choose right now, I'll go with Clemson, and I got Louisville beating Miami. So give me Clemson versus Louisville and Clemson winning the ACC.
I like it. So in that case, do you have Miami getting in the playoff at 11-1?
Probably.
Okay. Hunter, G5 team.
I gotta go with Boise. I got to. Like, I saw them play with my own two eyes, and like, yes, I'm being biased, and I know Georgia Southern's defense is not very good at all, especially when they play an offense with a pulse. And they've gotten better through a few weeks, but like the two good offenses that they've played, they've looked abysmal against. But like Ashton Genty single-handedly, like I don't think Power Five. Like if Alabama or Georgia had Ashton Genty, their team would be just that much better. Like, I think he is that good. I think he's the best running back in the country. He should be the first running back off the board. He should be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. That guy is a stud. So just for him alone, give me Boise and the G5.
I like it. Boise is one of the teams that I had written down as well. But I'm actually going to go with UNLV because why the hell not? Why not? After all the drama we've heard about in the past week with is it Sluka, something like that conversation, why the hell not? Came out with a huge win this week over Fresno State, 59-14. Whooped that ass. Just nobody thought that was coming. And now they got a big game against Syracuse at home. They still have Oregon State on the schedule. And October 25th, mark your calendar, they get Boise State at home. That's going to be a huge game for the G5 team. Whoever wins that is going to be obvious. Maybe not obviously, but they'll be one of the front runners. But yeah, like I said, why the hell not? Give me UNLV.
Yeah, so I like that pick, and actually I was going to talk about these two teams. I think, that game is, like you said, going to decide it, but I want to point out that UNLV has to play Oregon State, and then the very next week play Boise State. That's a gauntlet right there. And so I think if they're able to kind of hold themselves together for those 2 weeks and play the game that they probably should play against Boise State, they might take it. So I'm picking UNLV.
I like it. So Hunter, I think you're muted, but with that, I think that is our 1st and 10. So there are our conference winners through week 5. That was a good one. I like it. Probably going to be completely different in like 3 weeks with the way the college football season has gone. So I think it's time to preview some week 5.
Yes, it is.
Or review. My bad.
Recap. Yes, we're going to recap week 5, but I'm going to make an announcement to these two that they don't know yet that I just thought of. So after week 7, that'll be halfway through the season. Everybody would have played 6 games by then. This show is going to redo the 12-team playoff.
Ooh.
And that'll be 1st and 10 for week 7. So we can kind of get a new outlook after halfway through the season, kind of how everything's shaping out, and we'll give our new opinions on who we think is going to do what.
I like that.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And Tyler, we will see you again at the end of the show. Thank you as always, brother. All right, Jake. It's time. It's time. And it's time for Jake Stinch to unleash the unhinged dog. I'll let you have the floor, brother.
Yeah, I'll keep my cool on this one. So obviously a huge matchup coming to this weekend. Alabama at home in Tuscaloosa against Georgia. Huge matchup. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody watched it. I saw that there were like 12 million viewers today. All Saturday, everybody was looking forward to this game, and it did not disappoint. At first, we thought it was, but it ended up being just one of the best one of the best sports games I've ever watched, and just being there was the cherry on top. I'm really grateful to have that experience, to get to be there to see that. Even though we lost, Alabama, they played a hell of a game. It was awesome. I've gotten a lot of texts from my friends and just people that watch the podcast, whatever, about what's my takeaway, how am I feeling. Ultimately, I think me personally, and I could be biased, especially SEC bias, I think, Hunter, you might disagree with me, and even Tyler, I think these two teams are the best two teams in college football right now. Through week 5, I think these are the best two teams ultimately. Just with the way they played, the way they carry themselves, their rosters, how complete they are, coaching. So that's my take. Is right now I think these are the two best teams in college football. Moving into the game a little bit, and before I go into this, I think everybody will hear I'm a little bit Georgia biased. Obviously, I'm a Georgia fan, but a lot of this coverage is going to be on Georgia. But if you kind of reverse it, you notice like, why can't Georgia do some of the things that Alabama is doing? So it's a lot of credit. I think it's more credit to Alabama and how they played in the first half, especially, rather than Georgia being a disappointment. So I think the biggest thing from Georgia, and like Kirby said this in the presser, is this team they're tough, they're resilient, and they showed that. You go down 28-0 in the first quarter. I was ready to get the hell out of there. I really was. I'm not going to lie. The Alabama fans, the stadium was rolling. Fans were talking crap. Throwing drinks up in the air in the first quarter. I was like, this is not real. It felt like a fever dream. But for Georgia to find a way to stay in that game, to come back and give yourself a shot in the fourth quarter says a lot about the team, says a lot about the coaches, and just about the people and the characters they have on the team, the players. I mean, you got to remember, these are 18 to 22-year-old kids, and they're down 28-0, and you find a way to come.
17-year-old
I knew that was coming. But yeah, 17 to 22-year-old kids, they're our age, and probably most of the people listening to this podcast are 17 to 22 years old. When we were in high school playing football, we got down 28-0. Shit, the game was over. Like that's true. That's a fact. And just for Georgia to get back into it says it's just a testament to Kirby and his staff for getting them back into it, but also a testament to Kalen DeBoer and his staff. They let a team get back into it and ultimately found a way to win. And they put the game on the line on a 17-year-old kid's shoulders. I mean, that's amazing what he did throughout the game, but especially that fourth quarter play that everybody knows about and we'll see for the coming weeks. That was amazing to put the game on a 17-year-old shoulders, give him a chance. So yeah, ultimately for Georgia, just a broad takeaway. I'm not worried moving forward, especially after Ole Miss loss. I think we'll beat Ole Miss. Texas is a toss-up. Luckily, we get Tennessee at home. I think Texas is a little bit better team than Tennessee, is more complete. But I think 10-2 is the floor for Georgia moving forward, and especially now, 2 straight performances like that. Got a lot to improve, obviously. There's a lot to improve on for this Georgia team. So I'll kind of move into both sides of the ball. Offensively, there's so much you could talk about, right? There's these fans that are, and I think Hunter might be on this train, the fire Mike Bobo train. We had 500 yards of total offense. Carson Beck threw for 430 yards. We scored 34 points. Like I don't understand why you can call it Mike Bobo's fault when one of Carson, I think it was the first screen that Carson Beck threw, was an interception on a screenplay designed for Arian Smith, and he ran the wrong route. It was obvious. If you go back and watch the film, Arian ran the wrong route. Carson put the ball where it was supposed to, and it was ultimately an interception. I think it's still, like I talked about after the Kentucky game, it's ultimately execution. To me, it looks like Carson and the receivers just aren't on the same page at times. And when we are on the same page, we can't catch the damn ball. Oscar Delp had 2 drops. Dom Lovett had a few drops. And Dom Lovett had a great game. I think Dom Lovett, Dylan Bell, Arian Smith all had great numbers, but there were several drops that should have been made, several throws that were a few inches off, and it just looks like timing issues or not on the same page. So, yeah, and as far as, like, going back to the Bobo thing, I'm sorry. It's hard to go through a specific game plan and a specific script when you have all your plays listed out of each drive and what they're going to get, what they're going to be. When shit, we're not even sat down with a hot dog yet, and it's 21-0. I just don't. You can't put it all on Bobo. You can't point fingers to anybody after this because you got back in the game, you put yourself in a position to win, and ultimately you didn't. But pointing to Bobo, pointing to Beck, it just doesn't cut it for me. I think it's execution. Quarterbacks and receivers got to get on the same page because that's the biggest thing to me. It does not look like we're on the same page. And Bobo, I think he called a hell of a game. The only thing I would say about Bobo in this was the call, obviously the interception on the last play of the game, offensive play of the game, the toss-up ball to Colby Young. Is it Colby Young? Yeah. We had plenty of time. I think we had 2 timeouts, maybe 3. I think we had 2. I don't think that was necessarily the call there. I think you could have helped. You could have ran the ball there, but just keep inching, getting yourself closer deeper into the red zone, and give yourself an easier chance to score. That's the only thing I really have an issue with in Bobo's game the other night. And one thing, more design runs other than running between the guards. That's the biggest thing. And I know and if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about Georgia running the football, why we don't run the ball more or why we can't get the run game going more. Well, hell, if your only run play is to line up ETN and run between the guards, hell, it ain't going to work because they know what's coming. It's just the truth. But, yeah, just more design run plays. I'd like to see that. More, maybe a counter, maybe a trap, maybe more buck sweeps. I don't know. But the one play I will say that pisses me off, that Georgia has just been notorious to run for like 10 years, is when you do this. I'll just show you. Get up behind the snap. The quarterback is in shotgun. Carson Beck's in shotgun. Running back right here, right? We're on the short side of the freaking field. I don't know if y'all can tell from the camera, but let's say I'm on the left hash. The running back's on the left side of me. So I'm Carson Beck. ETN's on the left side of me. It's whatever in short, 3rd and long, whatever the fuck. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to catch a snap and toss out of shotgun now. We're going to take 3.5 freaking seconds to catch a snap and toss out of shotgun to the left side. We're already going freaking horizontal. We're not getting vertical at all. Our only 2 run plays are right up behind the center's ass and a damn horizontal parallel pass to the running back to the short side of the field. I don't understand why we keep running it. That play is never going to work, and it never has at the University of Georgia. I'm sick of watching it. I didn't want to get on the edge, but that's ridiculous. I'm sick of watching that play. I think we ran it like 3 or 4 times in key situations on Saturday night against Alabama, and it just doesn't work. Maybe Tyler knows more than me, and he can chip in on this about I don't know if it's a buck sweep. I don't know if it's a zone sweep. I don't know, but it doesn't make sense. We cannot run that play. It never works. Hell, it doesn't work against Tennessee Tech. It wouldn't work against East Jackson. It just doesn't work. And I know this is a very small thing, but I'm sick of watching that play, man. I'm sick of watching it. So let me cool down a little bit here. That's what I have on the offense. One more thing. I think the loss of Ra Thomas showed up big Saturday night because obviously you had Colby Young in on that last drive. Colby Young, going back to that play call, the last play call of the game where we threw the pick, he's a true freshman. And you put him in, and I think we threw 2 or 3 50-50 balls to him on that drive. I could be wrong. I know we threw 2. Asking a true freshman to do that, who doesn't have the numbers and film to show what Ryan Williams does, because I know you could say Ryan Williams is a true freshman, but hell, he's done it for 4 or 5 freaking weeks and put up 100 yards a game. Colby Young hadn't done that yet. But yeah, moving on to – go ahead, Hunter.
I just want to make sure – I just want to correct you. Colby Young is not a true freshman. He's a transfer from Miami, so now you can talk about it.
He's not?
No. Go ahead.
Did not know that. What is he, a sophomore?
I'm not exactly sure what year he is, but I know this is not his first year. He played at Miami last year. I think he might be a junior.
Well, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, because I am completely wrong on that. But still, he just I don't know. Having Ra Thomas would be huge. I'm sorry for the confusion there. I guess I'm not a true Georgia fan. Defensively, I said in the I said in my text to Hunter last week that I thought Alabama would come out and their press man up coverage, and that's exactly what they did. They forced Carson to put any kind of throws right on point, right? Any kind of crossing route, any throw had to be right on, and it showed when it wasn't. It would be an incomplete, it'd be an interception, whatever it might be. And my point of saying that about Alabama's defense is I don't understand why I don't know as much about the personnel as you might, Hunter, or anybody else, but why can't Georgia run the same cover one high safety, man up coverage that Alabama does? Because that's what they did to us. We sat back in a soft zone coverage, and all Jalen Milroe had to do was throw hitches. He had to throw crossing routes right behind the line of scrimmage where it was at to snag routes. That's all he had to do. It was simple for him. And credit to Alabama's offensive staff. He didn't have to throw the ball downfield. Yeah, there were a couple shots with Ryan Williams, but he just had to throw checkdowns. That's literally all he had to do the whole game because we sat back in a cover two high safety, three high safety at times. And I don't know why we can't run the same kind of defensive scheme that Alabama can. Are we not good enough? Do we need guys that out of high school that can run man coverage? I don't know. But that was a big thing for me was Milroe didn't have to be obviously he can take over the game with his legs and athleticism, but as a quarterback, as a thrower, he didn't have to do anything special. He didn't. He just had to throw underneath routes the whole game. And especially in the second half, they picked Georgia's defense apart. So yeah. And then as far as getting to the quarterback, I feel like we got home a few times in the first half and we just missed it. I think Malachi had one play in the backfield where he could have made a sack or a tackle for a loss. A lot of missed tackles. The first half was just weird for Georgia's defense. A lot of I don't know. I'm done with my rant. That's what I got.
15 missed tackles, the most in the Kirby Smart era under the university.
Really? I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Well, Jake, you did a great job. You did a great job covering everything. And I agree with you as far as the offense side of the ball goes, man. Like, it was definitely more execution. Now, if I was a University of Georgia diehard redneck fan and on the Facebook message boards, I'd be calling for Arian Smith's head right now. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. He had a few nice plays, but I mean, this guy couldn't catch a cold if he was standing in the middle of 17 people with COVID-19. I mean, my goodness, he can't. He's very inconsistent as far as that goes. You asked if I was on the fire Bobo train. No, I'm not. I will say Bobo, I don't know, and especially since he's been under Kirby Smart, he hasn't won a big game. Has not been able to win the big game, just like Carson Beck hasn't been able to win the big game under Kirby Smart yet. And that was something I said last week when me and Tyler were doing the show. I was like, man, like the two biggest wins that Carson Beck has as a starter is at home against Missouri last year and on the road against Tennessee. Besides that, as far as true marquee big-time wins, he has not had one. Now, I will say, dude, sitting in the room with a bunch of diehard UGA guys just surrounding me after I went on this show and chose Alabama to win this game last week was not fun in the first half. It was not fun at all. And I was not going to be disrespectful to them, like, no need at all. Like, this is college football. And they asked me, like, what do you want this outcome of the game? I'm like, dude, I just want to be entertained. Like, I just want this to live up to the hype. And that's what Tyler and I were talking about last week was this was the biggest game maybe of our lifetimes. Like, this was by far the biggest game of the season up to this point, and it might end up being the biggest game of the entire season. And all I wanted was to be entertained. And my goodness, I didn't know if I was going to be entertained at all. I mean, it was 30-7 at halftime, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, here we go. And one of the bets I added to my card this past week, I didn't put it on this show, obviously, but I said Alabama first quarter, money line. Georgia comes out slow every single game. And until Georgia stops coming out slow, it's going to be a problem, man. And whether it is coaching or execution, and I do think it is more execution than it is coaching. I agree with you 100% on that. Whatever it is, it needs to get fixed because Alabama played like the best team in the country in the first half. And then Georgia played like the best team in the country in the second half. And I'm going to give my flowers to the Alabama Crimson Tide. I've been texting a few people who are big Alabama fans and hey, congratulations on your win, this, that, and the other. But one thing I haven't brought up to them because I'm not going to drag a team down right now. They have no reason to believe that they shouldn't be the number one ranked team in the country, that they're not the best team in the country. But bro, if you play like you did in the second half, you might slip up and catch the wrong team on the wrong day. What if your offense doesn't come out firing on all cylinders like that, and a quarterback doesn't throw 2 interceptions in the first half? You could pull a Georgia versus Kentucky and be in a 1-possession game with, I don't know, for example, who's on their schedule, LSU maybe. You never know. This is the SEC. In my eyes right now is kind of turning into the NFL where it's a week to week type of thing. You can't just take one team and be okay, yep, they're going to just run the table. And as much as I'd like to say that with Alabama, they still have 7 games left on their schedule or 8 games left on their schedule. They still have to go through an SEC gauntlet. Now, it's not as hard as the Georgia SEC gauntlet, but they still have to go through an SEC gauntlet where they have to play the top tier talent each and every week. And if you don't show up for 4 quarters each and every week, you might slip up and catch a team on a bad day, like Miami did with Virginia Tech this week. Not that that's an SEC team or an SEC game as for a fact, but I mean, who in the world would have thought Virginia Tech would have came down to a officiating call in the last play of that game? That game was insane. So college football starting to move into that week-to-week thing. But, hey, like I said, going to give my flowers to Bama. They had a great game. As far as UGA goes, I believe it was execution. And I agree with everything you said about Bobo. I know you said, I don't know if Hunter's on that train. And, but like I said, my biggest thing is he might score a lot of points and this, that, and the other, but the guy hasn't done shit as the offensive coordinator as far as accolades go, as far as individual games and making it to the big one and all that kind of stuff and winning the big one. But, man, the only concern I really have with him would be that last drive. If I'm a Georgia fan, I'd be pissed about that, dude. You had 45 seconds left in the game, 55 seconds left in the game, and I know Carson Beck had to his arm had to have been falling off as many times as he's thrown it. But there were a few times where they gave it to ETN and the Alabama defense wasn't expecting it, and he did get a bunch of yards. You could have ran the ball a few times or maybe found something underneath or something like that. You had 2 timeouts. And maybe going for the corner solo shot in the end zone wasn't the best idea, especially because you probably wanted to leave minimize the amount of time left on that clock as possible, considering how explosive the Alabama offense is. But besides that, and even then, they could have gotten that matchup whenever they wanted, and even that was not executed correctly. That ball was underthrown and thrown on the wrong side of Colby Young at the end of the day. But, man, this is going to be a fun conference to watch the rest of the year, as it always is. Bama, obviously, their ceiling is to go 16-0, win the national title. Georgia, their ceiling could be going 15-1 or 16-1 and winning the national title, whatever it might be. But it's going to be interesting. However, I will say, like I mentioned earlier, Georgia's got that tough schedule, man. This team could – I'm not saying they will, and I don't think they will, but there is a possibility if you come out slow like you did and you can't catch breaks like you did in the second half as far as, beating the Alabama secondary, you could lose to Tennessee at home. It's happened before. You could lose to Texas on the road. Ole Miss, yeah, they lost to Kentucky, and they look like a bunch of pretty boys out there. But they're going to give Georgia their best game if they are only a 1 or 2 loss team in week 10 or week 11, whatever it is. So you really never know in this conference. But man, what a great game and two great teams. And I agree with you, Jake. Like these are like even though Georgia lost and yeah, it did look pretty in the first half, they're still going to be right there in it. That was probably the biggest thing I was telling my friends is like, you know, if they're showing all this emotion, I'm like, can y'all just calm down? I think y'all forget this isn't back against the wall. We have to go 12-1 and win the SEC to make it to the playoff. Like that's not how this works anymore. You can drop another game and still not worry about getting into the playoff, dude. Like they expanded it to 12 teams. Calm down. It's okay. Now, granted, you don't want to be staring down that barrel, but at the end of the day, you saw the way the team played in the second half. You know the talent they have out there. You know the coaching that they have. Like their season's not over. They still are going to be right there in it at the end, I believe. And I think Alabama will be too. And like I said, man, it's going to be fun to watch the rest of this season. You're muted, Jake.
My bad. Yeah, that's good stuff. I think that one more thing on Georgia, at least, this is well for both teams. This was both of their biggest game of the season and the best team that they were going to play. This is Alabama's. I think they're only two games that they really have to get up for. I mean, obviously, they have to get up for every SEC game. They have at Tennessee and then Mizzou at home. Other than that, I think the Georgia was probably their biggest opponent. And for Georgia, I think this was their biggest opponent. Georgia's not going to see a quarterback like Milroe again. They might see a better thrower, but Georgia struggles with the mobile quarterback, and it showed. Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Jackson Dart, Nico, they're not on the same caliber of a dual threat as Jalen Milroe is right now. So I think this was Georgia's biggest test, and you almost won it. You were right there, so it's a good sign for Georgia moving forward. And you got to come out and take care of business, and that starts this week with Auburn. I don't care how bad Auburn is. You got to take care of business, come out in the first half, get things going. And I know we'll get into some more of that when we get to the week six preview.
No, you're right. And I agree with you, dude. It's like, I don't care how bad Auburn's been every week. Like, Georgia's going to get the best game out of everybody. And just Alabama's going to get the best game out of everybody. Like, that's every team's Super Bowls to play one of these two teams or to play a team like Texas. You got to get up for it. I don't care like how many interceptions Peyton Thorne has thrown this year. Like, you can't bank on that. What if Peyton Thorne goes out there and looks like Monday Night Football Jared Goff? Like, you never know. You never know. Like, dude, Kentucky completed 6 total passes through 4 quarters of football against South Carolina 2 weeks ago. Then they take Georgia down to the wire. Then they go on the road to Oxford and beat Ole Miss. You just never know, man. So, believe it or not, there was more games than just this one this week. So, moving on, speaking of Kentucky, the Wildcats went right into Oxford and, I mean, hit Ole Miss in the mouth and did not look back. And I know I kind of mentioned earlier that Ole Miss looked like a bunch of pretty boys, and that's what you kind of get for not scheduling a single team with a pulse. Like, yeah, I get they scheduled Wake Forest, who technically is a Power 4 team, and I get it. You can only play who's on your schedule, but then you do make that schedule. And even if they wanted to play 3 teams without a pulse, well, 3.5. Shout out to my Eagles, of course, but let's be honest here, the talent's just not there, which I'm not ashamed to say. But anyways, if they need to play at least somebody with like a little bit of something, just so they know. They look like one of those teams where as soon as they got scored on, or as soon as the lead got taken against them in the second quarter, they just like didn't know how to play football. They just like forgot what the game of football was, and that's not a good team culture. It's a huge red flag. However, they do have enough talent. They do have Lane Kiffin who can scheme it up. Maybe this is something they needed. Maybe this is Ole Miss's wake-up call. Who knows? But shout out to Mark Stoops, man. I'll get more into him in a little bit, but man, shout out to this Kentucky team. Like, your record is not always what your record shows. Like, just because their record says 3-2 and 1-2 in the conference, if they wouldn't have gotten their asses kicked by South Carolina 2 weeks ago, this team would be ranked in the top 15 right now. So,
yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head. I didn't watch much of this game. I went back, watched the highlights. We caught the end of it at a bar in Tuscaloosa. But shout out to Mark Stoops for getting his boys up back to back. I would call them wins if I'm a Kentucky fan. That's back-to-back wins. You took the number 1 team in the country down to the wire at home, and then you go on the road and beat the number 6 team in the country. Ole Miss, a lot of question marks, man. I'm just not getting up. Played a team with a pulse, like you said, and I mean you lose at home in Oxford. That's not a good look with what's to come, at least. And I was looking at the box score, and being somebody that had Trey Harris receiving yards on Saturday. Jackson Dart had 18 completions. 11 of those were to Trey Harris. 11 out of 18. I think that's something that might come up with Ole Miss's offense. Trey Harris is obviously that guy. He's put up video game numbers so far, but you got to have another playmaker. Their second leading receiver in catches was Henry Parrish, their running back, and I think he had 3 catches. So that's something to look out for. They need a second playmaker, and they're not like they don't have the luxury of Georgia that has a wide receiver by committee room where everybody's producing. They have one guy, and we haven't seen a second guy. So that's something I thought was interesting about Ole Miss. But yeah, not a good look. Oh, this could be the wake up call, like you said, for Ole Miss moving forward.
Yeah, I mean it could be. Who knows? Or this also could be them just like laying down. Like this is a huge week for Miss in Georgia. How are you going to respond? How are you going to respond? Also, Juice Wells was out for this game. I'm not saying that like implemented the result. I do not believe that injuries determine the end factor of a game because you part of college football is it's next man up. You got to have depth. That's part of the sport. But he is a huge target for Jackson Dart. And I'm like I said, don't think it would have really changed the outcome of the game, but you got to stay healthy. And even if he is out, who is going to be that guy to step up? That's the question. It's not, oh, Juice Wells is out. Oh, we would have won if he would. No, it's who's going to step up to take his role. That should be the mindset of it. So moving on, shout out to Kentucky. I got more on them in a little bit. All right, so these were 3 other games that Tyler and I talked about a little bit last week, or at least 2 of them. Or I don't know if we talked a lot about Arizona and Utah, but dude, this game, I didn't watch a lot of it. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little pretty tired. Some would say pretty tired, ready to go to bed after that Georgia game, and this game was on, and dude, Utah just looked abysmal on offense. They could not get anything going. It's like we said earlier, we were doing the 1st and 10, man. Just without Cam Rising, this team's not the same. They're still going to be a physical team. They still got a really good line of scrimmage on the offensive line, and their defense is pretty solid. But, man, you got to score more than 10 points if you want to compete in a game. So, Cam Rising, if you're going to play, just play. Utah will run the table. If not, man, they're going to lose 3 or 4 games this year.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. We caught the end of this downtown Tuscaloosa, and it just kind of shocked me. Like, which it's obvious, like you said, and we've said this several times already tonight. If Cam Rising's playing, they're going to be a contender in the Big 12, probably the front runner. But props to Noah Fafita and that team coming into Utah. Utah's a team that's known for not losing at home, and they did it. So good for Utah. I mean, good for Arizona. My bad.
No, you're good. No, you're right. That's something I didn't really think about, but you're 100% right. Like, Utah doesn't lose at home. And another thing I want to talk about, Arizona's defense is cans, dude. Like, they are ass. And you can't screw up more than 10 points against them? That's a problem. That is a huge red flag. Next game up, me and you were on separate sides of this one, and I was just lucky enough to pick the right Big 12 team this week because, man, like, I think if this game gets played 10 times, I think it probably goes 5-5. But Kansas State at home in a get-right spot. We mentioned it earlier. Avery Johnson, from the plays I did get to watch in this game, looked like he was actually able to use his arm a little bit more, and that's something that you and I have been very skeptical on as far as Kansas State goes. It's like, man, he's young. He's not necessarily aware of everything going on. Like, he's trying to do too much. He's really good with his legs, but like, man, we got to see it with his arm. And there were a few throws and a few screens that they put in there for him and looked really good for Kansas State. Man, Oklahoma State, this is disappointing, especially for my boy Jake. He picked y'all to win the conference and get a first-round bye. And I will say, Ollie Gordon had like 87 yards rushing, which is really good compared to the past 2 or 3 weeks that he's had. But still, man, this is looking like it might be a little rough for the Cowboys this year, which in a year where they had all the experience and everybody returning, very disappointing for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, in a year they had all the experience at bringing back everybody. They were looked at as one of the more experienced teams, and this is one of the games I got to watch. They just look sloppy. I mean, just dumb penalties, dumb decisions offensively. Can't tackle on defense. They just look sloppy. But props to Kansas State, and like you said, Avery Johnson for putting them in a position to win and score 42 points. So, Kansas State, big win in the Big 12.
Holy shit, Auburn sucks. And like, well, here's the thing: they outgained Oklahoma by like 150 to 200 yards.
Yeah,
They were winning this game in the fourth quarter and just pissed down their leg and blew it. It was terrible. This game was terrible. And I told Tyler straight up, I was like, I do not trust a true freshman starting quarterback, first ever start on the road at Jordan Hare. Auburn will win this game ugly. And this game was pretty ugly for more than it was pretty. And Auburn should have won this game, and my logic should have stood. And this will probably be one of the last times I ever stick out my neck for the Auburn Tigers. Man, they look bad. But shout out to Oklahoma and shout out to, was it Michael Hawkins, their starting quarterback, finding a way to get it done. After you just got your ass beat by Tennessee last week, you have to go into one of the tougher environments in the entire country, much less the SEC, and you found a way to win. It doesn't get any harder than that, especially after you just got your teeth kicked in. So,
yeah.
Shout out to the Sooners for they're only 4-1. They really do have a gauntlet coming up here in the next few weeks, but they're 4-1. They won their first road SEC game, and shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out to the Sooners. This is one of those games where I had the same thought process as you. There's no way that Oklahoma goes in and wins with a true freshman quarterback in one of the toughest places to play. But then, like right before kickoff, I was like, you know what? Oklahoma needs this. Right after the ass whooping they got last week, Venables, if they start out 3-2, there's going to be some people calling for his job. So I flipped on Oklahoma, which turned out great, or flipped on Auburn and went Oklahoma. But didn't get to watch much of it. But I mean, props to them. 4-1. That's a good start. So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. So up next, oh man, this is just rough for everybody out here. More so you than me, I guess, because this is the second straight week that Jake's gone 2 for 3 on picks given out on the podcast. Now, I will say, I did have a winning week this week in college football. I did good. I might or might not have been indulging at Dingus McGee's, and for those listening in Statesboro, you know exactly all about Dingus McGee's, and saw that USC was only the line. It came down to about 14.5, and I was like, well, I'll buy that down to 12.5, minus 150, threw $75 on it, came out winning 50 in profit. So that had a huge role in my weekend. But man, Michigan and Minnesota, what the hell? I mean, Michigan, you're supposed to be the new under wagon. You are supposed to be there for me as my Big Ten under wagon. And now I don't have one. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm scared about that. And then Baylor, I got more on Dave Aranda in a little bit, but that was just pitiful. And Miami, okay. Tyler, I'm bringing you on. I hope you're listening. I need everybody's opinion on this. Was it a catch on Friday night, or was it not a catch?
I think he caught it.
I think Jake froze. I know Jake's there.
No, I did. I was waiting on Tyler. I agree. I think he caught it.
Miami should have lost this game outright.
Yeah.
Now, I don't usually believe in stuff being fixed, but like, all right, Tyler, I'll let you go for a second. But I don't usually believe in stuff being fixed. However, the ACC office is what the officiating office is what ended up ruling this game. And I know that they want more than one team in this playoff. And just saying,
yeah,
weird
no,
stuff
right.
that like now that they still have an undefeated top 10 Miami team. Just saying. But granted, that has nothing to do with I had them winning this game by 19 points, and they couldn't do shit. So, anyways, 1-3 for me, 0-3 for Jake, and obviously we've already talked about Georgia, Oklahoma State, and I got more on Baylor in a second. But if you'd like to add anything on Baylor, go ahead.
No, that game was we watched that before going to the stadium. That was a roller coaster. I really thought Baylor had a chance there at the end to win it, and they're just trash. But Miami game, that going on your pick, that game was just cinema in general. Anything can happen on Friday night, man. That was awesome. But yeah, if you follow this podcast and you want to, tail any amount of hunters bets, do not listen to anything I say. Just don't listen to it, because obviously 2 straight rough weeks after starting off pretty hot. But we'll get back. We'll get. This is a get back spot. We're due.
Or you can tail all of his picks this week, because the guy's going 3-0 because he's due.
I'm due.
He's due. He's 0 for 6 in his last 6. Some picks given out on the podcast, but he's due. And I don't even want to talk about this. Oh my gosh. This was beautifully set up. We didn't get too fancy with it. And you're trying to tell me that USC scored 38 points on Saturday, and not one of them was to their leading touchdown scorer and Woody Marks in the back. I mean, Miller Moss's wide ass ran one in from 11 yards. You're trying to tell me Woody Marks couldn't get in the end zone? Oh my gosh. That one was frustrating. But on to the disappointing teams of the week. We've already discussed them. These are just the 3 most notable: Utah, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma State. Utah, no Cam Rising. Trash. Ole Miss, everything in front of you, and you piss down your leg at home against Kentucky. And Oklahoma State, I know Jake's got more on in a little bit, talking about Mike Gundy. Impressive teams from week 5. We've already talked about Kentucky, the big win on the road. We already talked about Arizona going on the road to Utah, which is a tough place to play and get the win. But one team we didn't talk about that's on the screen right now for those watching on YouTube would be the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado's 4-1. And if you would have told me Colorado was 4-1 after their first 5 games, I would have told you you're stupid. In the preseason, I would have told you there's no way. There's no way they go on the road to Orlando and beat UCF. And not only did they beat UCF, they were 14.5-point dogs and won by 27 points. This was the best I've ever seen Coach Prime's Colorado team play. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I know they got Travis Hunter, which, Jake, I know you're still probably not bought in all the way, but, like, come on. This guy should be in the Heisman conversation now. I mean, what he does is impressive every week. But the offensive line consistently blocked for him. The defense caused multiple turnovers against one of the top rushing offenses in the country. They forced KJ Jefferson to throw the ball, which is never good. And they have enough playmakers on the outside to where if you give Shedeur Sanders time, he's going to put the ball in the right place. I'm not saying that Colorado's winning the Big 12 or making the playoff, but, like, there is a path, and they are technically in the top half of the Big 12 right now with undefeated record in the conference. So it's going to be very interesting, especially in a very wide open Big 12 where you never know what's going to happen every week. But I think that's the ceiling of Colorado, and I don't think they're going to play at their ceiling every single week. No team does that in college football. So I just want to give a shout out to them, because I never would have thought they would have been 4-1 heading into week 6. First of all, and second of all, the fact that they went in and won by 27 points all the way across the country in Orlando as 14-point dogs. That's impressive.
Yeah. Shout out to like you said, 14.5-point dogs going across the country. And after last week's just dramatic overtime game they had against Baylor, and ultimately winning that game, obviously, but it's a late night game. That's just a huge turnaround for them. And like you said, I'm not bought in to Colorado all the way, but I'm 100% bought in to the fact that Travis Hunter is one of the, if not the best player in college football right now. What he's doing week to week is just mind-blowing. So, he deserves to be in it, especially if they were to go 8-4, 9-3. He needs to be in New York, no doubt. No doubt in my mind.
I 100% agree. All right. Fire and ice. Jake, I will let you go first, brother.
All right. So my coach on fire is Mark Stoops. And I almost put him last week just for being in that game against Georgia and taking the number one team down the wire. And I know I touched on it a little bit earlier, but going on the road after last week, probably a little banged up, a little just tired and fatigued, and you beat the number 6 team in the country and as hyped up as they've been. So Mark Stoops is my coach on fire. My player on fire, Milroe. He's the clear candidate to win the Heisman right now. The best quarterback in the country in my mind. I mean, it's obviously it's week to week stuff, right? All these takes we give are week to week stuff. But after last week or this past week beating Georgia, the way he did, the way he threw the ball, the way he just put his team in a position to win, and his athleticism can keep them in any game against any team they play for the rest of the year. My team on fire is Clemson. Just another dominant win against Stanford, I believe it was. They just keep coming out and putting points on the board immediately. They did it against App State, they did it against NC State, and now they do it against Stanford. And I know Stanford's not a top caliber team in the ACC, but just for them to come out and getting these big wins like they have been ever since the Georgia loss week 1 is just big for them, and just proving themselves that they're still here. They're still one of the top teams in the ACC. So Clemson is my team on fire after week 5.
So, yeah, Jake, I agree with you. The fact that Clemson, they got kicked in the mouth first week against Georgia, not pretty at all, and had everybody writing them off already after week 1. And every single week, it's like they just continue to click on offense, like they finally got something there. I think this team's good, man. There's a very good chance they can go 11-1, lock up a playoff spot, and potentially a first-round bye in the ACC championship. My coach on fire this week, I got Mark Stoops. You already talked about him a little bit. I think the biggest reason why I put him here is because, man, Kentucky had a choice after week 2 playing South Carolina. They were a touchdown favorite in that game, a little more, and they got just skull drug at home, embarrassed, completed 6 total passes through 4 quarters of football in the SEC. Abysmal. Brock Vandagriff looked like dog shit. Then you move on. You get Georgia at home. This is the time to just continue to lay down with the number 1 team. Come in there, get an easy win, kick your ass, move on. Nope. You take them down to the wire, and you're maybe a 4th down away from converting a 4th down away from kicking a game-winning field goal in that game. Who knows? Then you only lose by 1, so then you move on. You got to go on the road to Ole Miss, and you get it done. Brock Vandagriff looked really good. He did. He looked competent against Georgia, at least running the ball. He looked really good throwing the ball against Ole Miss in this past game. Man, that takes a good coach to get your team in a position like that after an ass whooping 2 weeks ago, a game you probably should have won last week. And you got to continue to get them up and be like, guys, y'all can win this game. And getting them to believe, that's huge for them. So shout out to Mark Stoops. Ryan Williams is my player on fire this week. And, yeah, I know everybody says, oh, my gosh, 17. Yeah, that's probably the reason I have him up here legitimately. The kid's 17 years old. This guy's supposed to be taking Algebra 2 and eating square pizzas in the cafeteria in high school right now, okay? And he's out here in a packed-out crowd taking on one of the best notorious defenses under Kirby Smart, and maybe not this specific year, but defensive coaches and known just to have a top-tier defense year in and year out, and just dices them up for 177 yards and a touchdown, making circus catches, looking phenomenal. He's my player on fire. And then we just talked about Colorado. I just glazed them up a little bit. They're my team on fire this week.
Good stuff. So going into our people on ice this week, my coach is Mike Gundy. I know I talked a little about it earlier, but just they looked unprepared on Saturday, and in a game as big as that, after losing to Utah the week before, they needed that, and you would have expected a little bit more of a closer fought game, and they just got steamrolled for 4 quarters. They really did. My players on ice this week, I put UGA DBs. And I'm not talking about just the UGA, the Georgia DBs as a whole from throughout the game. Just the last play, the Ryan Williams bomb. KJ Bolden and Julian Humphrey had one job, and they had a chance. They both had a chance to get him on the ground, and they looked like chickens running around with their heads cut off and run into each other. They had a chance to get him on the ground, and we would have lived to play another down. Yeah, Bama might have been in score position, but they ran into each other. If you go back and watch the play, watch KJ Bolden and Julian Humphrey on that play. Just watch them. Me and Hunter could have ran out there and did that. It was pitiful. But moving to my team on ice, we already talked about them. Ole Miss. It was really close to being Georgia if it would have continued to be a blowout. But Ole Miss, a loss at home like that to a Kentucky team, which Kentucky, I mean, is Kentucky going to be like in the playoff mix here at the end of the season? I mean, what if they go 10-2? 10-9, what are they? What are they right now? Oh, yeah, they're 3-2? 2-2?
3-2.
What if Kentucky goes 10-2? But anyways, my team on ice is Ole Miss.
No, I don't think Kentucky's going to go 10-2. What I do think Kentucky's going to do is be a pain in everybody's ass that they play, except for South Carolina, obviously. If they show up like they have 4 out of the 5 games that they've played this year, they'll be in it at the end. They might not win all of them. They might go 6-6 and win half of them. Who knows? But they're going to be right there at the end. They might be like kind of like Virginia Tech was to Miami. Like they don't keep up with them talent-wise, but they have good coaching and they have a few athletes that can make a few plays. Like Barryon Brown's a very good wide receiver one in the SEC. They're going to be a thorn in everybody's side. All right, my coach on ice this week is the exact opposite reason of why I chose Mark Stoops. My coach on ice is Dave Aranda. Dude, the seat's hot, really, really hot, steaming hot, especially after you lose to Colorado in a game you should have won. Like, it was already hot heading into this year. You set the expectation too high in year one. You won the Big 12. You've been downhill ever since. I think they only won 3 games last year. Like, this was a must-win 7 to 8 game year for Dave Aranda. You drop one to Colorado, and you couldn't get your team up at home against BYU, and you lose again. This guy is as good as gone after this year's over for the Baylor Bears. My player on ice, I just went with the entire Florida State offense. I feel like it's just always a given. I couldn't really pinpoint like a certain individual or unit that like I just really thought crap the bed. Maybe Peyton Thorne at Auburn. That would have probably been a good one. But it's always fun to pick on FSU. I mean, you go into SMU, tiny-ass SMU. Don't get me wrong. Like, they have solid talent over there. And, they've won to be Power 5 more than anybody else. But DJU, 12 of 30 with 2 picks. But I've been one on here like, okay, I'm not saying I'm a DJU believer, but like, my gosh, this guy has no time in the pocket, and they drop more passes than Arian Smith. So FSU, like, can just mail it in for the year. I know you probably already have, like, they're not even making a bowl game this year. So then my team on ice, I went with Auburn because, well, it's more than just the players. Hugh Freeze, what the hell, dude? I knew that you probably didn't think you were going to compete this year, but like after like taking Georgia and Bama down to the final possession last year, you'd think this team would compete a little bit more than what they're doing right now. So that's why they are my team on ice, and they do have to play a Georgia team coming off a loss, so that'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But like we said earlier, SEC is a week-to-week conference. That's fire and ice for Week 5. And, man, the Georgia Southern Eagle Report by yours truly, Hunter Waldrop. So this past week, Georgia Southern traveled to what was formerly known as Turner Field to take on crosstown rival, the Georgia State Panthers. And we won 38-21, came out hot, straight out the gate. Josh Dallas with a huge touchdown catch right there on 3rd and goal. J.C. French put together a great drive, great play calling, great script. Defense let one up in the first quarter on a deep shot. I was starting to get a little concerned. But then second quarter, man, we answered everything right back. 10 points in the second quarter, making it 24-7 at halftime. And I was like, man, we're rolling. We came into this game as 3.5-point underdogs, believe it or not, which I was a little nervous about. I was like, oh gosh, like Vegas might know something about Georgia State. Like, I didn't think they were that good. And then in the third quarter, I started getting really nervous because it went from 24-7 to 24-21. We did get one back at the end of the third quarter. and then we topped it off in the fourth quarter with another touchdown, making it 38-21. But, man, the biggest takeaway I got is that we finally got the ground game going. The first 3-4 weeks of this year, I was starting to get really concerned. Like, Jalen White is one of the best running backs in the Sun Belt Conference. He truly is. He was preseason first team all Sun Belt for running backs. And I was like, man, he's going to be a stud this year. And I started getting a little nervous after about 3 or 4 weeks. But we finally got it going. Jalen White, 22 carries, 114 yards, averaging 5 a pop and 2 touchdowns. And not only that, our running back too, O.J. Arnold, he had 11 carries for 110 yards, averaging 10 a pop with 2 touchdowns. He had a 32-yard rush as his long. Man, that was awesome to see. If we can keep the ground game going, I have no concerns about our offense as far as throwing the ball, maybe a little bit of pass protection. But besides that, I believe in J.C. French. I know our receivers are very talented and can make plays when needed. Speaking of J.C. French, 24 of 39, played great, threw for 237 and a touchdown. So really, really proud of my guys this week getting a conference win, a rivalry win, and that is the Eagle Report. This week, we do have a bye week. Get the boys rested up before we have 2 of the biggest games at Paulson this year. We are hosting Marshall at 8 o'clock in 2 weeks, so that's going to be a huge game. They just got back from Ohio State, and they have looked like a competent team in the Sun Belt, so that'll be a fun game to be at. And then after that, we have homecoming against yours truly, JMU. And, yeah, some people might say, man, it's a stupid game to schedule homecoming on, but last time Georgia Southern hosted JMU, JMU was 7-0, ranked 25th in the nation, and Georgia Southern upset them at home. So anything's possible in college football. I'm very excited to see where this Eagles team can go. Can we please win at least 7 to 8 games this year? That's all I ask. We've been 6-7 for 3 years in a row under Clay Helton. Can we, or maybe 1 year we were 7-6, who knows? But right around the 500 mark, can we please do a little bit better than that this year? We're on the right track. I believe in this team. Heck, we're first in the Sun Belt East right now. Maybe we can play for the Sun Belt Championship. That would be awesome. That is this week's Eagle Report. And now for the top 5 of weeks heading into week 6. This is Jake and I's top 5. And Jake, unmute your mic, please, sir, so you can discuss your top 5.
Sorry about that. Good stuff on the Eagle Report. So my top 5 this week, I have Alabama at 1. Like I said earlier, I think they're the clear, uncut number 1 team in college football after week 5, week 5, going into week 6. I have Texas there at 2, Ohio State at 3, Tennessee at 4, and Georgia at 5. I know you dropped Georgia out of the top 5 there, but I still think they're the 2 best teams in college football. I really do. They deserve to be dropped to number 5 in my ranking, and I think they're number 5 in the AP poll. Yes, 100%. But ultimately, I think they still deserve to be up there. I know you could argue Miami, but Miami almost dropped the game to a way lower caliber of a team. Dropped the game to a way lower of a caliber team than they are in Virginia Tech. So that's my top 5. And I see you got one of a team that's hadn't been up here yet, and that's Oregon. Tell me about your top 5.
Yeah, so Jake, you actually have the same exact top 5 as the AP, believe it or not. So if I was doing power rankings now and like power ratings, Georgia would definitely be right there at the top of the mix, because I did say I do think they are still one of the top 5 teams, 3 teams in the country. However, I actually had Georgia out of my top 5 when we did this after the Kentucky game. I took them out then because at that point in time, I felt like there were 5 teams that deserved to be ranked ahead of them. Maybe not power rated or power rankings, but as far as just ranking teams 1 through 5 based off resume, I didn't believe Georgia deserved to be in the top 5, and I still don't believe that. I have the same exact top 4 as you: Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee. I don't think there's any arguments there. I mean, the only argument I can see in our top 4 right now is that if you want to move Ohio State down, and that's just because they had a cupcake schedule. But, like, if you watch them play, bro, they are legit. They are going to be a very good team. I put Oregon in there over Miami just because of how Miami looked this week. I feel like if Virginia Tech can expose some stuff on Miami, Louisville and maybe some other team can. Plus, I still think Oregon's more talented than Miami. I think Oregon's got a better coach than Miami. I think they have a better culture than Miami. and they are finally starting to show that they have a pulse. And so I was like, screw it, dude. I was high on this team coming into the year. Yeah, they struggled a little bit at the beginning, but getting in the top 5.
Good
And
stuff.
Tyler, do you want to hit up the editor's note? Yes, he does. All right, let's bring him in. This is Tyler Vaughn's editor's note. Hang on, let me go here and
All right, guys. So we are totally back with an editor's note today. So we're going to start off with the Peach State Pride segment. This week we have a big matchup in 5A. In Region 2 of 5A, Lee County and Coffee County are going to play. I believe that game is going to be on Friday night. I know the Hurricanes have been switching everything up. But yeah, they're going to play, and Lee County is currently ranked number 2 in 5A, and Coffee County is number 4 in 5A. This will decide their region, and honestly, the winner of this game might be the state champions in 5A. They both look really good. I'm excited to see what happens in that one. Want to touch up on the Center Colonels. I know we've been talking about them. You've gotten a couple updates. Big game this week against a familiar foe, Trinity. Every year I've been in college, I said this last week, I think. They've won our conference. So super excited to get the opportunity to play them. We think we got a good game plan going in. We're excited to see what happens. I am in Kentucky, and Kentucky had a big win this weekend. And one thing I have figured out in my time of being in Kentucky is that fans of the Cats are absolutely delusional. So real quick, Colton, come over here. I'm going to introduce you all to my roommate, my guy, Colton Price, Kentucky native. He's going to give you one quote, one sentence about the Cats right now. So, Colton, let's hear your delusion.
So Kentucky coming off one of their best wins of all time. They're the best 3-2 team that has ever existed. They should be 5-0. You know, South Carolina was a fluke game with the injuries. Lose to Georgia by only 1 point, and if Stoops goes for it on 4th down that game like he did against Ole Miss, we win that game. And number 1 team in the country, it's excusable. So I mean, we should be 5-0. Win out the season, play the way we've been playing, winning the SEC, beating Tennessee, beating Texas, and then we'll see what the Cats are like postseason.
All right, so there it is, folks. The Cats are going to be the SEC champions. So just wanted to give you all a little delusion, some comedy from my UK fan roommate.
Okay, that is the biggest delusion I've ever heard. I'm
sorry. The best 3-2 team ever. I love it. I love it.
Okay,
they're delusional.
I can get behind that delusion, but like the fact that they should be 5-0, like you can't make up the fact that you lost 31-6 to South Carolina at home.
Hey, look, I told him the same thing. I'm telling you, in the 4 years I've been here, these people are nuts.
That's crazy. But that is this week's editor's note, and now Jake and I got something a little different for you. Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate you as always. We'll be catching you at the
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Jake and I have got something a little bit different. We were talking about postseason baseball. Jake's hinted at it a lot this past few weeks. Like, man, postseason baseball's coming up. We know we're going to talk some baseball. Well, today, at October 1st, we're recording this tonight. So the first 4 games of the wild card round have already happened. And so some of these might be a little we might look a little stupid already for some of the picks that we've made, but this is the MLB postseason. Let's bring it into the podcast. We love talking ball over here. We're all about the diamond. So as you can see, here is the bracket for this postseason. We got the Dodgers and the Phillies getting the first round buys in the National League, and then you got the Yankees and the Guardians, or they should be the Indians, but besides the point, the Yankees and the Guardians, to be politically correct here, getting the first round buys in the AL, and everybody can see the bracket from there on out. And here is Jake's postseason predictions, and I will let you have the floor, my man.
Yeah, I'll start up at the top left. So Detroit Tigers, a young team that have caught some heat here in the past few weeks, just came out of nowhere and snuck in at the 6th spot. I have I have Houston beating them. I think just experience takes over here. But the Tigers, Scooball, I mean, he's that guy. Yeah, led him to a game one win today. I'm still not done with Houston. I think they're going to win the series. And then ultimately they beat the Guardians. I don't think the Guardians have the pitching nor the experience that Houston does. Houston is just one of those teams that they're going to find their way to the ALCS if they're there. Just the turnaround. I remember back in April when the season started, they were like 2-18, 2-17. That would have been a picture perfect bet if you would have put any money on them just to make the playoffs, just to win the division. So yeah, I got the Astros at the top part of my AL championship part of the bracket. I'm sorry, guys. And then we got Kansas City and the Baltimore Orioles. Seems like just a matchup that's like the future of baseball, really. I mean, both of these teams are extremely young. I have the Orioles winning, but after watching the day, it seems like, so you got the Orioles, they have Corbin Burns. He obviously went today, he pitched 8 innings and pitched really a perfect game. I think he only gave up 1 run and it was early. But the Royals, man, they have pitching. They still got Lugo going. They got Michael Walker going in the next 2 games. So the Royals might be a little sneaky team. If they can catch some heat like they did today, found a scrappy way to win the baseball game. So look out for the Royals is what I'm getting to. But I ultimately had the Orioles winning and then facing off against the Yankees. And I think this is the year that the Yankees bats, even though they don't have the pitching, can lead them to a playoff win finally. So I have them and the Astros meeting in the ALCS with the Astros. Like I said, they're that team. They have more pitching, more experience, been there before, and the Astros in the World Series. Moving over to the NL, if you're a Braves fan listening to this podcast, you know that the past few days in Georgia sports has been just taking years off your life. You had the Georgia-Alabama game, and then you had the Falcons sneaking out a win, and now the Braves yesterday, and that doubleheader. It was a really fun game to watch. It was another like caliber game baseball-wise as the Georgia-Alabama game. It just didn't turn out in our favor. Just the offense that unleashed from both sides later on in the game was awesome. But anyways, Mets and Brewers starting there at the top. I have the Mets winning that. I really think the Mets are one of those teams. I think each year there's 2 teams in the MLB once they get in the postseason that can make a run, right? Like the Braves did a few years ago. We obviously went on to win the World Series. Last year, you had 2 of them make it to the World Series. You had the Rangers, you had the Diamondbacks, 2 teams that nobody thought that would be the World Series matchup. This year, I think those 2 teams could beat the Royals in the AL and the Mets in the NL. I think they're a team. They've caught fire. They've had like the best record in the MLB since the All-Star break. So I got them beating the Brewers, and their offense came alive today. They put up 8 runs and just really handled the Brewers pretty easily. And obviously not having to use Severino in Game 2 yesterday was big for them. Moving on, then they got the Phillies in the second series, 2 of my favorite teams ever, the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies. I think the Phillies are going to get a good little taste of their own medicine. They've never had the first round bye in this new playoff format the MLB has, and they haven't had the experience of having their bats going dry after a week off like the Braves had. So I think the Mets take it to them, but ultimately I think the Phillies are a better team. I think I meant to have the Mets winning. I think I told Hunter wrong, but give me the Mets beating the Phillies. I'll put it there. Give me the Mets beating the Phillies instead of the Phillies winning there. And then bottom half, I have the Braves. You get the Braves and the Padres. The Braves, it's just been injury after injury after bad luck. AJ Minter's out. Obviously, Spencer Strider's out at the beginning of the season. Acuna, Austin Riley. It's just been very hard. Chris Sale obviously getting scratched yesterday, and he's going to miss the wild card series. Padres are a hot team right now. Their offense caught fire. They got 3 studs. They got Michael King, who pitched tonight, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, and they have Yu Darvish. He's a vet. I mean, they have a great pitching staff. So give me the Padres, and then I have the Padres beating the Dodgers. I think they're another team that's just going to go cold. Ohtani is the best player in baseball right now, no doubt. But I think just that week off, man, I think eventually they're going to have to change it. So yeah, I got the Phillies and the Padres in my NLCS, and I got the Padres. I think they're just going to catch fire. They got 4 really good pitchers, very, very experienced, good pitchers that have been there before. So that's my World Series, the Houston Astros and San Diego Padres. And Hunter, I'm sorry I took that long, but that's my postseason bracket.
Oh, dude, no, I'm probably going to take just as long. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, off to me. And, man, do I look like a dumbass after picking the Orioles to win, and they're already down 0-1. But, it is baseball, man. Like, all it takes is they just got to get from series to series. I guess I'll start in the bottom left. I do have the Orioles taking on the Yankees and the ALCS. I did have the Orioles beating the Royals, but like Jake said today, man, I watched this entire game from start to finish. Corbin Burns pitched one of the best games I've ever seen him pitch, and he's won a Cy Young, maybe two. I can't remember off the top of my head with the Brewers. And this guy comes out, pitches 8 perfect innings. Well, not 8 literal perfect innings, but just about. I mean, he only allowed 1 walk the entire time, and the only time he allowed a walk, the man stole the base to second, and then one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball, Bobby Witt Jr., comes in there and knocks a single through the infield and allows a run to score. And that was it. That was the only run scored in the game. 1-0 Royals. The bats have got to get something going. Like, this has probably been my biggest concern as far as the Orioles goes. Man, like last year, they won the division, won over 90 games. Like, holy crap, this team's so young. And they got to the postseason and it showed. It showed how young they were. They got swept by the Texas Rangers, who were very hot and had a very explosive offense. So after seeing what I saw with the bats today, I am really concerned, considering that you still have Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha and, if needed, Brady Singer. I know it's only a 3-game series, but they can choose whoever they want in Game 3 between Wacha and Singer. So all 3 of those pitchers are phenomenal, and the O's have got to put the bats on the ball. So I am concerned. Tomorrow they are starting Zach Eflin, who I like a lot as a starting pitcher, so we'll see. And then if it gets to Game 3, it's all hands on deck. I guess they'll start Dean Kramer. Moving on to the top left, I have the Astros taking down the Tigers. Jake said it perfectly. Like, Tariq Skubal is that dude. However, I don't think the Tigers have the pitching depth, especially not tomorrow with the Astros with the back against the wall, with all the veterans and the staff. Like, they've been there before. They win the postseason. I'm not going to be surprised if, even though they go down 0-1 to start the series, the Astros come back and win. And once the Astros get on a roll in the postseason, y'all know how it goes, man. Like, they're going to continue to win. I don't see Cleveland being the team to slow them down. And so then I also moving on to the bottom right, or bottom left still, I should say, I did have the Orioles taking down the Yankees, and this is more of I just don't believe in the Yankees. Like, the Yankees always choke in the postseason, and I really enjoy this Baltimore Orioles ball club, so there is a lot of bias that goes into that. But I do think when you look at it, the Yankees do choke in the postseason. They are inconsistent. Like, if they don't have Judge and Soto going, everybody else is pretty inconsistent. I know Jazz Chisholm's been a pretty solid bat for them since moving over at the deadline. But screw it. Give me the Orioles, even though they're probably not going to be alive even after tomorrow. And so in the ALCS, I continued my Orioles love for this young organization to take down the old heads and the Astros to move on to the World Series. Moving on to the National League, I actually did have the Mets when I first made this and was going through it. And then the last second, I was like, screw it, man. Like, the Mets are coming off short rest. Like, do they have the pitching depth after, yesterday having to play a doubleheader with the Braves? Like, the Brewers can get them. They got good pitching. They got a few solid bats with Contreras and Jackson Chourio, but didn't seem to matter today, man. Like, Francisco Lindor is showing his worth to that organization over there in New York, and they are looking like a pretty solid team. And like Jake said, man, like, the Phillies, they better watch out if either one of these teams make it out, because when both of these teams are hot and the Phillies bats are cold and haven't played for a week, they can scoot right past them like the Phillies have done to the Braves the past 2 seasons. But I do have the Phillies taking down the Brewers. And moving on to the NLCS, I just think they have too much talent from top to bottom, starting, pitching, rotation, and 1 through 9 in the batting order. That team is legit. Bottom right, like Jake said, man, the Braves, it's been just a tough season. You know what? Even though it's been a tough season, they still found a way to just make it to the postseason, which in the summer, when they were struggling against the Oakland A's and some bottom half teams, and they really were throwing out some bums because they had no depth whatsoever, I didn't think they were going to make the postseason. came down to the literal last game of the year, but they got in, which is still, shout out to them for never giving up. But if anybody watched the Padres Braves game tonight, the Padres are legit. The Padres are 46-18 since the All-Star break. That is absurd. That is absolutely absurd. This team, from top to bottom, the rotation with Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Michael King, Dylan Cease. Everybody forgets about Dylan Cease. He had a top 3 ERA in the entire National League this year. He threw a no-hitter. That guy's a stud. Fernando Tatis hits nukes, if you couldn't tell. Jake Cronenworth's a guy that's been there. All around, that team is really good. Manny Machado, obviously, one of the best players in Padres franchise history. And they get the Dodgers in the second round. And I think this is going to be where a team slips up from not being able to swing the bats. The Dodgers, just like the Yankees, yeah, they have the highest payroll every year, but they do good in the regular season. Then it gets to the playoffs, and it doesn't matter how good you did games 1 through 162. It does not matter. And I think the Padres get the Dodgers again for the second time in 3 years, which brings me to an NLCS rematch of 2022. The Phillies taking on the Padres, and I have the Phillies going back to the World Series for the second time in 3 years, and that is my MLB bracket. And here we go. I'll bring Jake back on. Here are World Series champions. I chose the Phillies this year. I think they are just the most complete team in baseball. I think they have a really good coach. They have leadership, great veterans, great young pieces. They got it in the bullpen. They got it in the rotation. That's probably the biggest part about postseason baseball is you got to have the pitching, and I think the Phillies got it through all phases of the game.
Yeah, that's a good pick, Hunter. And I want to touch on what you said about the Padres. I totally forgot about Dylan Cease when I was talking about the Padres. I mean, their pitching staff is loaded. Yeah, I picked the Stros to win the World Series this year. I think it's just inevitable. They're just always there. And if they get hot, man, they're going to be tough to stop. So give me the Astros to win the World Series.
Good deal. Well, thank you guys for listening as always. I'll let Jake close us out. Don't forget God first and God bless. We appreciate each and all of you.
Yeah, so as always, go like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and go follow us on our socials per usual. We appreciate all of the love you guys have been giving us, and next time we talk to you, we will be live from Athens, Georgia on Friday afternoon. Hunter will be in town. We'll have a live show. More to come on that. I knew Hunter was going to come back on. We will be live on Friday afternoon in Athens, Georgia.
I totally forgot. I meant to stay on here so that you could, when you said it, I'd be on here. But yes, I know I mentioned that the Eagles have a bye week this week. Friday night on YouTube. Oh, I don't know if it'll be on YouTube, but I think it will be through StreamYard onto YouTube. So I think we will be live literally on YouTube. I don't know if there will be a podcast version for it. So please go just look on YouTube for it for those who do listen. And we are going to be sitting in the same room, looking at the same games, butting heads with each other, and having a good time. It's gonna be awesome. We're having a live show on Friday. Don't have a time for it yet, though. We need to figure out the exact time.
We'll post it on our socials.
We'll post it on the socials. Yes, sir. Probably, if I had to guess, it'd be around 7:00.
Yep.
Not nowhere close to a final time, just a very rough estimate. But live on Friday night from Athens, Georgia, before the Georgia-Auburn game.
Yep. 100%.
All right.
So, yeah, we'll be live on Friday night. Be on the lookout for when that'll be. And yeah, get your popcorn ready, as Lane Kiffin would say. So that's podcast 129, episode 12.
Episode 13.
Damn it.